to take forward the SDGs in global socio-economic cooperation. The Sustainable Development Goals were adopted in September 2015 as a part of the resolution Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. India is committed to achieve the 17 SDGs and the 169 associated targets.
I'm not a finance student. I am not an MBA.
Excuse me, can you all please mute yourself? Yes, thank you.
Sorry, please switch off your...
No, it was not coming from me, it was coming from someone else. So yes. So India is committed to achieving the 17 SDGs and the 169 associated targets, which comprehensively cover social, economic, and environmental dimensions of development and focus on ending poverty in all its forms and dimensions. As a women chamber of
in the financial aspect of what you want to
is that an echo?
No. Where's it coming from? As a women business chamber of commerce focused on women empowerment and sustainability, all our efforts are focused on achieving the SDGs. There's a lot of sustainability. So all our efforts, like I said, is focused on gender equality and sustainability. Cooperation is inherent to India's civilizational values. The country has been appreciated by all stakeholders for its role in shaping the global agenda on social and economic development. India recognizes that the promotion of global well-being requires institutionalizing the concept of one world through partnerships based on solidarity, equity, and sharing. India has spearheaded many global initiatives and beyond bilateral engagements focused on norm setting at multilateral institutions as well as strengthening the United Nations. India has a long history with the UN. India's permanent mission in the UN represents India in the UN, and the mission also handles India's relationships with 193 countries. We are very glad to have with us Ambassador K. Nagaraj Naidu, the Deputy Permanent Representative, Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations, New York. Ambassador Naidu is a career diplomat and Indian Foreign Service officer of the 1988 batch. Mr. Naidu is a fluent Chinese speaker and has served in China in 4 separate stints. After his return to the Foreign Ministry in New Delhi, Ambassador Naidu served as the Joint Secretary Director General of the Economic Diplomacy Division in the Ministry of External Affairs from 2015 to 17. Mr. Naidu was also the National Coordinator for establishing the International Solar Alliance in India. He also served as a board member in a number of public sector organizations. From 2017 to 18, he served as Joint Secretary, Director General of the Europe West Division, handling many European countries and European Union. Mr. Naidu has a master's degree in Law and Diplomacy from Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Welcome, sir, and thank you for being here. We have with us FLO's 37th National President, Janabi Kukan. Janabi is an entrepreneur and co-founder of 2 award-winning companies in the tourism sector, Assam Bengal Navigation Company and Jungle Travels India under the JTI Group. Her companies are involved in boutique, river cruising, hospitality, tea, and handlooms. A strong advocate for sustainable development, Janabi is passionate about her work with women and the impact they have on their lives and livelihoods. Over to Janabi for your welcome speech.
Thank you. Namaste. Your Excellency, Ambassador K. Nagaraj Naidu, India's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, FICCI President, FICCI
and then the lower level we are keeping
here, and my FLO, some past presidents who are here with us, and my dear FLO friends. Thank you, Ambassador, very much for giving us today your valuable time and addressing us. It could not have been a more opportune time to discuss the role of women entrepreneurs to take forward the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the global socio-economic cooperation that we are addressing today. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 SDG goals is the roadmap for progress that is sustainable and
So I think it's the combination of all these wonderful people that are the
Women are just potential beneficiaries of the efforts to achieve the ambitious SDG goals, and they also seek to be active participants in achieving them. That is why we at FLOW seek to work actively towards the SDGs to help women foster entrepreneurship and to become job creators and no longer job seekers. The 2030 agenda clearly cannot be realized without the participation of women worldwide. Ironically, this year, 2020, also marks the 25 years since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action, which declared the most progressive blueprint for advancing women's rights. Over the years, we were progressing in our endeavors toward equal rights, but the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has reversed this limited growth that we have made on gender equality and on women's rights. According to the UN Women Report, women contribute 37% of the global GDP. 527 million women work in the 4 sectors today: accommodation and food services, real estate, business and administrative activities, manufacturing, and wholesale retail trade, all unsuitable for remote working. And women make up the large percentage of health and social care workers. These are professions whose representatives are increasingly on the front line today fighting this pandemic. Yet the global gender gap for women is stuck at 16%, leaving women more vulnerable than ever before to this economic downturn. So from immediate relief efforts to longer term recovery strategies, all sectors of society have a responsibility to ensure action to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and be responsive to this equal and unequal impact of women. It's a unique and unequal impact, disproportionate impact on women, especially. So it's more pertinent than ever before to ensure women's representation and inclusion in all planning and decision making. Everything we do now and during the COVID must aim to build more inclusive, more equal, and sustainable economies and societies. This is perhaps one of the clearest lessons emerging from this pandemic. Last year, Ambassador, in one of your speeches, you had mentioned that India had moved from women development to women-led development. In your words, and I quote, "While the discourse on women's empowerment is progressing from viewing women as recipients of welfare benefits to mainstreaming their concerns and creating space for them to assume leadership roles, challenges remain. In such situations, the role of civil society becomes critical in socializing innovative solutions on method, means, and substance." That is how we see a role of FLOW today as the women's wing of FICCI, to play a vital role in taking women forward and to join in these SDG goals envisaged for all. The UN SDG goals, this is the blueprint to achieve the better and sustainable future for all of us. These goals interconnect to leave no one behind. And therefore, it's crucial for us at FLOW to work towards this. For 37 years, FLOW has worked for women's empowerment at the 3 levels of grassroots, urban, and corporate level. And one of our primary agenda has been to create women entrepreneurs and to facilitate an appropriate platform for women to think, learn, create, adapt, and achieve empowerment in the truest sense of the word. This year, as the 37th president of FLOW, my mission has been to work towards sustainable practices and sustainable livelihood for women's economic upliftment. We have tried to align all our national initiatives this year with the SDG goals, especially Goal 1, 2, 3, 5. Goal 1 for no poverty, Goal 2, zero hunger, Goal 3, good health and well-being, Goal 5, gender equality, Goal 8, decent work and economic growth, Goal 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, Goal 10, reducing inequality, and Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. We at FLOW have partnered with organizations with similar vision to try to achieve our goals. focused on a sustainable economy and working towards a sustainable world. And it has been to create sustainable economic possibilities at all these levels. So we began with a three-pronged initiative, which we call the FLOW 3 Cs of competency, capacity, and confidence building for women at 3 levels: to skill, upskill, and reskill. So from street vendors and domestic workers to subsistence farmers and seasonal agricultural workers, as well as workers of the seasonal artisans and the handloom and handicraft sector, women make up a disproportionate percentage of women, of workers in this informal sector. That is why we at FLOW took up what we call the Village Adoption Plan to work on life skills for women and for the returning migrants, particularly in COVID times. We've had an implementing agency called Women on Wings. They are a Netherlands-based organization who work towards sustainable livelihood for rural women in India. And they've been working since 2007. Just to tell you briefly, at the urban level, we also tied up with a FLOW member who was a pioneer of the first all-women delivery service in India, called Hey Didi. And we were helping them to train women to get their driving license, drive two-wheelers, and get ready employment at the e-commerce companies for the last mile delivery services, since e-commerce has been the order of the day and is growing at a phenomenal rate in urban and semi-urban India. In the handloom sector and handicrafts, this is also the second largest employer of women after agriculture. Their FLOW partnered with a collaboration called Creative Dignity, seeking to help the distressed artisans upload their goods on the e-commerce site. And they were trained through volunteers to be able to take photographs and join the e-commerce bandwagon. So we tried to create nano entrepreneurs along the way. These are the most invisible and the vulnerable sectors who now have the information, the knowledge, and the platform to try to overcome the distress. These are some of the practical ways we've tried to make an impact. At the urban level, we've had adopt an ITI program where we've been working with students in the industrial training institutes throughout the country. And because it's not been a physical presence yet, we've been able to train over 2,500 students. We had 3 batches of workshops so far, and it was met with great enthusiasm for the certified programs that we run. For that, we've also tied up with the National Skill Development Corporation. And through their portals, such as the eSkill India, we are trying to reach to more and more young people, young students throughout the country. And just on a different spectrum altogether, on an international spectrum, I'd like to mention here that FLOW has worked over the years with international women's organizations to promote B2B collaborations, sharing of best practices, and activities that could be done between women of these various countries. But international trade was a sector where the gender gap still remains very visible. And this year, we wanted to address that. And in this online platform, we have started to hold international consultation with women entrepreneurs globally through what we call our Women of 7 Regions, or 7W7 initiative. We wish to create a worldwide forum for the exchange of information, experience, visibility, and connectivity among women business owners. We want to set the stage for new opportunities and joint ventures among women entrepreneurs and business leaders. That is our hope for the future, and we've had great success going forward. And we will be our members in FLOW and the world members in these platforms. We have B2B forums with them, and we are taking the way forward. And we know W7 has great potential and has been received very well. So these are some of the gender responsive policies we've tried to work towards. And we wish to take these social policies with women's economic empowerment at its very heart. And sustainable livelihood generation has to be the core response to how do we deal with the pandemic, how do we deal with the recovery plans for our country, and how we take forward the SDG goals as well. So I would like to now request Ambassador Naidu to please give us your inputs and your guidance, since we're here to learn and to understand better how we, as the Women's Chamber of Commerce, can work towards this goal for the greater good of women today. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you so much, and a very good evening to everybody back in India. I'm extremely honored to have been invited today to address Wiki Flow, and let me actually place my deep appreciation to Secretary General FICCI Dilip Chinoy, Janabi Kukan, President of Flow, and Haritri Patnaik, who really, kind of had me going and addressing all of you today. And all the women entrepreneurs who joined and friends who joined today's webinar. I have nothing much to contribute. All of you are already, entrepreneurs in your own right. If there is something that I could perhaps contribute to today's discussions, is perhaps how we at the UN are seeing the gender inequality issue, and what perhaps global policymakers could contribute in order to ensure that the whole concept of women empowerment that all of us keep talking about actually gets realized. Let me actually begin today's my intervention by quoting Swami Vivekananda, who long time back said that there is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. He always used to give the metaphor of how can a bird fly with one wing. This is very crucial for all of us to understand where we as a society keep coming from. I think all of us need to realize that we are a continental sized country, 1.3 billion people. There is so much of success in India that success never gets reflected because our numbers are too large. Whatever we do is like a drop in an ocean. There are millions of entrepreneurs. We are not a 50 million country or a 60 million country. That's the whole point. So whatever we do has to be done at scale. Unless we do it at scale, what we do gets lost. So I think when the world came together way back in 2015 to put together the concept called Sustainable Developmental Goals, all they had in mind was how do we ensure that we all act together to end poverty and to ensure that people enjoy peace and prosperity, all by a deadline called 2030. By 2030, how do we even achieve this? This is a dream. It's a desire. Nobody even expected COVID-19 to hit the entire world. So as such, all the SDG development that we perhaps achieved has already been hit very severely. Just last year, the United Nations produced a report called Multidimensional Poverty. And India was one country which reduced multidimensional poverty by 270 million. That's a huge number. It is almost the population size of the United States. But today, with COVID hitting and the economy already kind of taking a hit by 25% in the last quarter, we really need to watch out. All the hard work that's gone into development has to some extent reversed. So how do we get back into track? When we all talk about SDGs, all of us need to remember that there is a slogan. This slogan was coined by all member states when we were at the United Nations. It's called Leave No One Behind. The point is, how do you not leave someone behind? What do you do for that? If you look at each of the 17 SDGs, the SDGs were actually designed to bring the world to several life-changing zeros, meaning zero poverty, zero hunger, zero discrimination against women and girls. How do you reach this magic number called zero? That it's a huge task. So for this, I think creativity, know-how, technology, financial resources from the entire society and globally is needed to achieve the SDGs. As Janabi has just mentioned, 25 years ago, the 4th World Conference on Women, which took place in Beijing, adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. It was a path-breaking document, even by today's standards. If any of you could read this declaration and platform for action, it had then called for progress towards equal power and equal rights for women. This dream is still very elusive. The 2030 agenda cannot be realized without the participation of women, particularly those working in the private sector. The World Bank often, puts out a statistic. It says that if women had the same lifetime earnings as men, the global wealth could perhaps increase by $160 trillion. This is a staggering number, even for a statistic. The McKinsey perhaps even goes to say that, if you just about advance women's equality, you could be adding just about $12 trillion additional to the global economy by 2025. And in a best case scenario, this number could even jump to perhaps $28 trillion. That is actually the GDPs of China and the US put together. So how does one make this all happen? How do we even reach that? If you go by, all these studies that are put out by these economic groups, the World Economic Forum way back in 2019 says that for every dollar that a man gets paid, a woman on an average gets paid just about 54 cents. So that itself is a huge disparity. And there was an experiment sometime back. It was done by Harvard, MIT, and Wharton School, in which, what happened was a same idea was pitched to investors, and only the person making that pitch, the gender changed. When it was a man who made the pitch, the investors were more confident in investing in that particular venture. But when it was a woman that came and presented the same business idea, perhaps the investors were not that very confident. So where does the problem lie? Is it how we see women, or is it some entrenched patriarchal frameworks that we all grew up as children? And this is a very difficult question to argue. At the UN, we always keep debating these things, as to how do we even recover better. Let's focus a bit on India. And if you look at there's this report by Bain and Company. Bain says that 432 million women of working age in India constitute the country's untapped economic resource. We're talking about 432 million people. Well, women play a very important role in Indian society. They somehow remain a neglected segment of India's paid labor force. In addition to low and falling female labor force, actually female labor force participation has been falling, at least for the last 16 months. And women experienced 3 times more unemployment than men, thus limiting India's advancement. So this is something that we all need to keep thinking. As policymakers, we keep thinking what is happening. We see that even in the recruitment into the government services, the number of women applying to government services is also falling. But the good part, in the foreign service, it's becoming 50% women recruitment. So that's a huge jump. So, but overall in bureaucracy itself, we are seeing a decline in women entering the bureaucratic services. So let us look at the India growth story. And perhaps, have we ignored the role of women? It's very crucial to understand. Indian women are perhaps much better educated and enjoy better healthcare today than ever before. But they continue to somehow face structural, social, and economic barriers to paid employment. One of the primary reasons that we feel that women leave workforce or do not enter it in the first place is there are unpaid caregiving responsibilities. We all have, as I said, very long-standing patriarchal social norms all across the country. And we also have cultural expectations and have put the burden of taking care of the family, perhaps children, elderly, household, everything on our women folk. There was a very nice OECD study. I don't know if you've ever read it at FICCI. It's good to look at this report. It says that in India, prior to COVID-19, Indian women performed almost 6 hours of unpaid work every day on an average. This is a huge number. And if you look at broad statistics, 66% of women workers are never paid. And in India, about close to 60% of women have some kind of a mobile phone access, but the internet penetration for them is barely about 19%. And only 35% of women are actively using their bank accounts. This further reduces their flexibility to be entrepreneurs. If you cannot even manage your bank account, or you have a bank account in your name, but that doesn't get utilized. So essentially, the so-called financial intermediation that all of us keep talking about is not really getting transformed or not getting translated somewhere. For example, women represent 42% of our agriculture labor force, but they just own about 2% of the farmland. So you till the land by having absolute no ownership to it, but somehow you are responsible for everything. So this is a tragedy. And as a society, I think if women cannot realize their full potential losses, then it's very difficult for India to keep advancing. Investing in women is good for everyone. All of us know it. Because if one invests in women, she invests back in the family, children, and society at large. Women entrepreneurship directly affects income. It impacts employment and capital formation, while indirectly benefiting household level resource allocation. While India's business environment is improving, I think the low women economic and entrepreneurship rates are part of a broader gender gap that we are seeing in economic participation and opportunity. It is very crucial, I think, for all of us to provide equal access to education and encourage women to use their acquired skills by joining the workforce. If you look at what's happening today is that while we have at a very young age, we are seeing 100% enrollment in schools. By the time you get into middle school, I think 20 to 30% of women drop out. And if you look at technical education, our numbers look very bad. So this is something of deep concern, and perhaps FICCI, as women entrepreneurs, such debates need to be carried forward, at various forums. We need to also address the business environment, challenges that women entrepreneurs keep facing. This is not merely confined to lack of financial access. I think there are a lot of other issues also. We keep saying that India has about 16 million women entrepreneurs. These women entrepreneurs are largely single person businesses, but they provide employment to close to 25 million people. So 16 million enterprises providing jobs to 25 million people. It is said that by accelerating growth in this number, as well as the size of women-owned enterprises, we could perhaps generate about close to 200 million jobs by 2030. So this is where I think the potential lies. And the World Bank keeps saying us that if you boost women's participation in employment and entrepreneurship, India has the potential to add perhaps $700 billion to our GDP by 2025. Huge numbers. I don't even know how economists even reach these numbers. But whenever we get these numbers, we actually either doubt them or are surprised. Because if this is the potential, then why doesn't it get translated into action? This is something, it's a huge, it bothers all policymakers. Either the McKinseys of the world indulge in this kind of broad extrapolation of statistics which will take us nowhere or just keep us happy for the moment. So this is something that, as policymakers, we keep thinking about. If you look at now, what can we all do about it? Unequal access to finance is definitely a key factor, not just in India. We've seen that in Africa. We've seen that in Latin America. It's happening everywhere. At the same time, I think women also, perhaps women businesses, they would need access to a broad networks of knowledge. It's very, very important. It is not necessary that one is excited about being an entrepreneur. You need to, we have good knowledge about the business practices. Where do I get knowledge about how do I profitably do business, access to other business resources. Role models are very important for society. For women, that's very, very important. Women role models are very important. If you just a little bit of diplomacy, if I can get here, in 2007, India was the first country to contribute women police troops to Liberia. We had, nobody saw, we all keep talking about peacekeeping. These are very conflict-ridden societies. And then India thought that, okay, perhaps women will be better peacekeepers. So when we sent in a large team of women police officers to Liberia, Liberia was then, there was strife, there were riots, they made a huge impact. For 10 years, the presence of these women transformed Liberia's security situation. And the president of Liberia said, she was so thankful of these Indian women who have left their families back home and had contributed to boosting the morale of Liberian women to come forward and say, oh, women actually do this. So for India, this was a huge boost. And since then, we have been, after what India did, every other country said, oh, let's get in women peacekeepers. So women actually, the presence of women in a peacekeeping mission has completely transformed the dynamic of how women could take on leadership roles and contribute to the overall security situation of the country. So coming to women entrepreneurs, I think as each one of you, you are running businesses, you are independent women. So what could you do to push forward the SDGs, at a personal level or at a business level that you have? I don't know. Maybe you need to keep a target for yourself in your own companies. How many women do each of you employ? Do you have 50% of your workforce are women? Do you think that's a reasonable target to even fix? So if women entrepreneurs really want to push forth SDGs and the lot of women as a whole, perhaps this is something where we could start off with. Can you all assure sufficient participation of women in your own companies? Maybe as women entrepreneurs, as CEOs, can you have women drivers yourselves? That maybe, just to give it a shot. Is it possible for 30% of more of your workforce at the decision-making and governance level to have women driving this? Second thing, at the UN, we all keep pushing for pay equal remuneration, including benefits, for work of equal value, and strive to pay a living wage. A living wage is very important for women workers. So can you do that? So tomorrow, if this lady is an independent lady, can she live all by herself in an urban setting so that she's not dependent on somebody else? So a living wage is very, very crucial to pay. 3, I presume most women kind of provide, or women organizations provide support access to children and dependent care by kind of providing services, resources, and information. But this perhaps should be made part of the overall office environment. Government of India is already doing it. Perhaps, I don't know, private companies, I know a few which already do that. This actually helps a lot in kind of relieving the women workforce from a lot of other responsibilities which are added on to them. Establishing a zero tolerance policy towards all forms of violence at work, including verbal, physical abuse, and preventing sexual harassment. This is very crucial. This is absolutely, because as I said, we all come from very patriarchal societies. Our mindset are very skewed. It requires a lot of change to kind of tell as to when people are crossing their limits. We do it all the time. In my mission, every week we do an exercise. I speak to all the officers in the mission to ensure that there is absolutely zero tolerance when it comes to violence at work, verbal, physical, or any kind of sexual harassment. So this is something that we all need to look at. And then can we also think about expanding business relationships with, can you expand with other women-owned enterprises? So can we have a women supply chain running around? So perhaps that's what Vietnam is doing today. Vietnam is coming up with some very nice examples of how women entrepreneurs keep that cycle going on. Can you have those linkages? One woman entrepreneur gives business to the other, and somehow they've all set for themselves minimum standards of having women in their organizations, driving policy, driving strategy, driving HR. So these are areas where perhaps I think all of us need to look at. I think it is something doable. It is not, it's definitely, we don't need an Einstein for this. Perhaps all that it requires is that we change the way we look at people. I think there is so much to say on the issue of women's development. The SDGs go on, each SDG, there are only 17, but if you look at, if you break it all of them, there are about close to 648 of them. So because each SDG has so many inbuilt other elements and agenda action points, that is something that is, it's very huge. SDGs need to be becoming a part and parcel of the way you conduct business. I don't know how many, whether FICCI members all have these SDG charts in their offices. Not many people even remember these 17 SDGs because, naturally it is not really possible for everybody to remember. But it's good to have, maybe in all companies, just to have those SDGs put up on a wall. If not for anything, they are very colorful and perhaps could remind you of those little 17 goals, which perhaps all of us need to remind ourselves to make this world a far much better place. I think I would just put it out that perhaps we could all discuss this. I think gender equality is pretty much the unfinished business of our generation. All of us need to get this done. 2030, 2050, these are not dates. These are milestones. But I think every milestone is within ourselves. The day we think we could change, I think that day a society would improve. I think I would leave it at it and see perhaps if we could have some kind of a discussion going on. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Ambassador Naidu, that was very insightful. We are waiting to, sorry, I can't get through. Will you just take over?
Yes. No. Thanks, Ambassador Naidu. I think you wanted to put up the SDG chat. Are you trying to share your screen? Have we lost him?
I'm not being able to see.
Yeah, he's there.
We can hear you, Janabi, President Flo, we can hear you. Yeah.
I can't see anybody. Okay.
Yeah, so I think Ambassador Naidu was trying to put up the SDG chart. Do you want to put up the chart? Please unmute yourself.
All right, let me see if I can pull it out.
Or else we have a lot of questions for you.
Oh, no, please go ahead. I don't really have to put it out. Please.
In that case, shall we start with Mr. Dilip Chinoy? Let's hear the soul man's voice here before the women take on with their questions.
I think, Ambassador Naidu, first of all, thank you very much. Two reasons. One, you've made 100% increase in the number of men usually in this program. I'm always the odd man out here. So thank you for that. The second thing is that, you started off by saying that you don't know what you will contribute, but, you went out to actually explain everything that needs to be done and more. But you were, one of the areas, and being the sole male member of this audience, I think there was one more person, but he has logged off. You talked about a change of attitude and, change of perception, etc. What would your advice be, and what should we take as an agenda to sensitize men in this area? What could men do differently, to address some of the issues that you have talked about? Or what parents do differently? Many parents don't want to give their girls, a mobile phone, even though now it's got online education, etc. So that's my question.
That's a very valid question, but a very difficult. I don't know whether I could even answer this. See, each of us come from very different backgrounds, and it all depends on the where you grow up or how one is brought up in life. I think to give a good example, I have two kids. The elder one is in college. The younger one is my daughter, and she's in grade 9. I think the way we brought up my son, I think I've used pretty much, I've never made a distinction between the two. So I think as long as all of us treat both men and women as the same, we cannot expect wonders to keep happening. They will not happen. And even today, if women are yet to be provided even a mobile phone, that itself to a large extent talks about how we view the world in a very constrained manner. As long as we have constraints that we have kind of added to our own mindsets, we will not see that change. Mahatma Gandhi always wanted, be the change yourself. If you want to see the change, I think there is no better way than to start ourselves to, really transform. If we want women to thrive, women will thrive. As long as we don't feel that way, it's not going to happen, because somehow we've kept that gender confined. As long as we keep doing that, it's going to be a very risky exercise. See, for example, the only way we could do it, the way we've done Panchayat Raj elections, where we have reservations, 30%, this is called positive discrimination. All of us know it. Just because at that level, there is a feeling of entitlement. I am the male member, so I need to give decisions. So unless and until the government intervened there and brought in that element that, look, we need to have positive discrimination over here. Today, you see 1.3 million women are there in women panchayats, 1.3 million. And let me tell you, out of this 1.3 million, there are close to 250 of them who are PhD scholars, who are like the Panchayat Raj presidents. Last year, we had 3 women Panchayat Raj presidents flown in to the United Nations. And let me tell you, all 193 countries were sold out. They said that this is amazing. They didn't speak English, only one spoke English. The other 2 spoke in Hindi and it was interpreted. But the passion they brought into their, how they were transforming lives, nobody needed interpretation. That feeling was so stark and strong that those 2 women made a huge impact. So this is what it is. I think, as I was saying, at the UN today, there is a huge drive to ensure that the UN staffing is 50% men and 50% women. It's been completed, already done and dusted. So right from security guards to the Deputy Secretary General, There are women everywhere. It's a complete transformation. And when the UN is doing it, there is a whole pressure onto the member states, we as member states. So we keep checking, hey, how many women officers do I have? Is it all male? So do I write back to the ministry? Can you please send me women officers? This is very important. Everybody else has got 50% women officers. So where are we heading for? So there must be peer pressure built up. It is very, very important. So somewhere a little positive discrimination to begin with, because we have to create that environment. Otherwise it's not going to start. That's needed. But then you got to keep, the peer pressure is very important. Till, we had the World Bank business rankings, that pressure that India needs to be in the top 50. We perhaps never really thought that, okay, this is important. But then when we set ourselves that milestone, that target, then we move towards that. I think this is very important for all of us, that, if India wants to feel proud about itself, India needs to keep benchmarking itself. You cannot feel proud in a cocooned world. If you think we are part of the global society, we really start to benchmark ourselves. We can't say that my house is better than your house. No, that's not going to work. So we all somehow need to ensure that, as a country, if our streets need to look good as how they look in Singapore or any other city, it all starts with us. So I think it's a very long kind of an answer. I don't even know if I've even answered you, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Now I would request Janabi to ask her question.
Right, thank you. Ambassador, that was, there's so much of learning. We're absorbing so many new inputs that you put forward to us. And just to share with you that when you spoke about the Panchayat Raj, that is heartening for us. We know that women, I think, finally need that to come forward in this space. We also have to claim our space, and what the government has given, we have to come forward and do it. And education is so important. The online classes that we are trying to do in Flow, the life skill training that we are trying to do in all our initiatives, the transformational life skills, which sort of empower women to think for themselves, to appreciate and get that confidence. Because just skill development we see is not really enough. They need to have that whole mindset around them as well to go forward. So those are the holistic approaches we are also trying. And I just wanted to share with you that we do know that in the patriarchal society like ours, it is up to us women to train our men and our young sons and to look differently at women, appreciate women as equal stakeholders. So towards this month, we are starting this, joining this global campaign for working against gender-based violence. And along with that, we have a male partner, which is called MAVA, Men Against Violence and Abuse. MAVA is also joining us, so to speak about the man's story. And we also have another component where we are teaching young children to talk about safety and sensitization in this e-commerce, in this e-world that we are in, which is the new threat of cyber stalking and e-porn and everything else. So those are also things we're addressing. There's so many issues to address, so many levels, so many parts in this subcontinent that we call our country. So on all those fronts, we're trying to work. And we know that whatever we do, it really begins at home. So end of the day, it goes back to each woman to also train the men around, the children around on this. So that is what we brought in. And like you had mentioned about the role models, women as role models. For that, we at Flow have started our mentorship, we think is a very crucial part of what women entrepreneurs need. So Flow's national initiative on the mentorship, where we give one-to-one mentoring, and we have a mentors and mentees working on this is another sort of vertical of what we're working at. So that is what I wanted to ask you, that as a chamber, this is what we're doing. And can we get, for the SDG goals that you mentioned, how do we benchmark ourselves? We are very conscious of this, and we would like to work towards this. How to emphasize and re-emphasize this SDG goal, like you said, put this up in every office chamber. But yes, we would like to play a role in this country's a role for SDGs. I know the Niti Aayog is capturing it state-wise, but as a business chamber-wise, we also will seek to be a part of that.
No, I think it's a very genuine question, and I think I'm glad that you even liked it. Maybe, I could perhaps, after today's meeting, I could perhaps, forward something to Dharitri, wherein, she could perhaps circulate it all to the women entrepreneurs in today's webinar. At the UN, what they have done is they have broken down, say, for example, one that is more relevant to this grouping is SDG 5, which pertains to gender equality, women's empowerment. So SDG 5 itself has got a lot of sub aspects to it. And, whether your company or whether your organization is compliant with these goals, that has been reduced to a rubric. And perhaps each of your organizations, maybe Vicky could take the lead and send this across all the women entrepreneurs and ask them if they can perhaps rank themselves. Do they have women at policy decision-making levels? Who handles their HR, or who handles business strategy, or something like that? And whether they have some of the world's best practices in place, whether it comes to pay, whether it comes to education or funding, etc., etc. So I'll be able to send something so that you could use it, and perhaps ask each of your members to rank themselves whether their companies are actually SDG compliant, or forget SDG compliance. Are they SDG 5 compliant? Are they compliant for women themselves? So I think that will be a huge beginner. The UN has an organization. I don't know whether Vicky has any partnership with the UN Global Compact. There is something called the UN Global Compact, and they do a lot for the business side. So while the UN does for the government, the Global Compact does the same thing for the businesses.
I see.
So they work with companies all across the world, just to see whether how can companies and organizations actually contribute to the SDGs, to the whole SDG debate. For example, if somebody is into manufacturing, are your manufacturing practices compliant with, say, today's requirements pertaining to climate change? For example, the Kirloskar company, who kind of manufacture Toyota in India, they have a beautiful facility which is almost 100% run by solar. So they're manufacturing cars using solar. So they are actually meeting one of the SDGs. So is it possible for corporate India to rank itself, and maybe maybe Vicky can champion this. Maybe somebody could say, oh, we are all 17 SDG compliant. So this will be huge. This exercise itself, maybe you could partner with NITI. NITI has the tools, but NITI does it as you know, at the national level, regional and sub-regional level. But I don't know whether it really captures the private sector. I have no idea. But they do have a very nice India index on which you can see how India is performing across the 17 SDGs. But the business component, I don't know whether it is getting captured. But maybe this is perhaps an area where FICCI women can take a lead and see, at least you could start off with SDG 5 compliance. It will be stellar. If you could do it, perhaps get World Bank to look at what you work, what FICCI is doing in this area. This will be huge.
That's great food for thought, Ambassador. We will definitely try to work towards that, push towards that. Because we know Niti Aayog today, but as a corporate body, what you've spoken about really makes sense, and we will work towards that. We will strive towards that. I had one more question for you. When you've spoken about the role of the civil society, that it's critical in socializing innovative solutions on the method, means, and substance. But how do we do this in our country? Will that require more legal or legislative changes to ensure women's rights?
I don't know. See, civil society, they are like the shadow of society. They are very crucial. Civil society, nobody gets into civil society unless you are a born activist. You must be passionate about something. You must be passionate about life. You must be passionate about something in life. That's what drives somebody to take up a career in a civil society. Civil society organizations, they are driven organizations. They don't work for money. They are passionate about a cause. I think it is the cause that transforms them. We all talk about RTI. If you read the history of right to information, it is such a fascinating history. And you will feel so proud of the country you represent. And the kind of judicial activism we have seen in this country, no country even comes close. I still remember as a young school student, somebody told me, you can just take a postcard, and then write to the Supreme Court of India about an issue where you are deeply concerned about, and you perhaps would get a decision. Everybody said, no, how can this even happen? That can happen in our country. That is the judicial activism. People seldom realize we don't value what we already have, because this is so huge. I think all of us need to remember that civil society organizations, as I said, they are the spirit, they are the shadow of the society. And civil society organizations, have a huge role even at the United Nations. A lot of civil society organizations, since they contribute to global discourse and indulge in something called as normative agenda setting. This is what they contribute. This is huge, because you see, people like me are more focused on policy. But why do I need a particular policy to address a particular issue? That underpinning is given by the civil society, because they are in touch with the ground. I am not in touch with the ground. I am above ground, because I somehow am finding myself in this position. So I am not there, really asking people, how's your life? Is this income sufficient? So that job is getting done through civil society organizations, who are people who are charged. So the United Nations depends heavily on civil society organizations. And a lot of civil society organizations over time, they come to the UN and seek something called as ECOSOC status. So once you get, ECOSOC is the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. So once you get ECOSOC status, you get to participate in deliberations. So at the UN. So this is huge. So a lot of organizations, which are civil society organizations, do come here, and then they visit all of us. They're very passionate. They come and tell me, oh, why is India not doing this? This is, why are you not focusing on enhancing, say, the age of marriage for women? Why is that 18? Why don't you make it 21? Why? Because they give you all the reasons why it must be made 21 and not 18. So civil society organizations, they are the building blocks of society. It's an alternate voice. It is a voice which is good, but sometimes you might not like it, because they might put out certain negativities which you might not be comfortable with. But to some extent, they are a mirror of society, and we need to somehow work with them. And I think they have a huge role to play.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ambassador Naidu. And I feel extremely happy that you've been talking good about the civil society, especially given the current scenario here. And I do come from a civil society background, so it makes me really proud of what we've done and achieved so far. I know we're running out of time. I have two questions from my fellow chairpersons. One is from Mallu Natarajan, who's the floor chairperson for Mumbai. She wanted to ask, is 2030 an achievable target date? Also, with varied areas of focus, can we achieve zero hunger and no poverty at the same time, at the same pace as gender equality?
I think it's a very good question. 2030 is something, see, unless, that's what I say, unless you have a date or something, the world is never going to work. It is like an examination. Your final exam starts on May 1st. If you didn't have a date, you'll never work towards it. So it's something like that. I think we've all given ourselves a date. The world has given itself 2030, December 31st as a target. So it kind of pushes you. So what happens is all countries every year in the month of July, maybe 40 to 50 countries come to the UN to present out what they have done on the SDG front. We did it for the second time this year, but because of COVID, Niti Aayog, Deputy Chairman Niti Aayog had kind of virtually joined us and presented out India's case. So I think a deadline is always helps. Whether we can achieve something by 2030, nobody expected COVID to happen. It just happened, and it is like one of the world wars where it has impacted all of us. It has not been very selective in its spread. In some sense, COVID-19 had flattened the world. All of us are, equally impacted, whether you're developed or the underdeveloped, whether you're an island state, all of us have been impacted. So I think 2030 deadline looks difficult, but some countries can achieve not all the 17 SDGs, but perhaps could meet 3 to 4 of them, not necessarily in a particular order, but there are, if you can just meet SDG 1, you could actually meet all SDGs to some extent. SDG 1 is very crucial, and please always remember that we are a nation of 1.3 billion people. And somehow, with all of India's constraints, we have ensured food security to this country. We not just ensured food security, we've also become a net food exporter. So there is something happening in this country of ours, which people sometimes don't seem to fathom. What perhaps we also need to look is to ensure that nobody goes unfed. I think not getting a meal is a crime. I think as a society, that's the least that we can do. If you don't have basic energy within yourself, I don't think you will be able to do anything. I think as a society, if we could ensure people get to eat at least 2 meals a day, I think we as a country will go ahead. As long as my stomach is full, I could focus on something beyond just looking for food. So I think, we are a large country, we have our issues, but I think we really need to ensure that nobody goes hungry, any single day. To that extent, I sometimes feel very happy when we do these, the Amma Tiffin centers, or, wherein you get something for just about 5 rupees or 10 rupees, or maybe it is more than now. But I think this is very useful. I think if I'm able to get my protein or, my lentils or my carbs, in 5 rupees, so I could actually start focusing on doing a lot of other things. So I think this is very, very crucial. I think if not for anything, zero hunger should be our goal. And that will be a beginning to really transform things.
Absolutely. And I think it's a shame that we still have it as one of our goals when the world has never been so wealthy as it is today. So we should definitely make sure that we don't have it in 2030, this goal, and achieve it. One last question before we let you go is this is from Dr. Aarti Gupta. She's from our Flow Kanpur chairperson, and she's like what Janabi mentioned. She's asking about that. Flow has started an initiative called Teach Them Young for cyber safety for the young students. UN has a youth forum for internet safety as well. And what she would like to know is there any way where we can tie up or have a partnership with them to take it forward in India?
No, absolutely. I think the UN will be very keen to partner with any organization towards, I think, achieving any objective. That's what the UN is. The UN is for member states. The UN also has an office in Delhi. They have a very large presence. And the UN office in Delhi has various branches. I would suggest that FICCI Kanpur through FICCI Delhi could reach out to them and perhaps have a very nice interactive session by Renata Deselian. Ms. Renata is the resident coordinator of the United Nations sitting in Delhi. She would be delighted if FICCI could invite her. And she will perhaps bring her entire team who look after various aspects of SDGs. The UNDP, there is a lady called Shokonada. Shokonada is, she's a Japanese, and she handles the UNDP side, because today I think the UN has two offices. One is the resident coordinator's office, and the second is the UNDP. So I think a good interaction, they're all women. So FICCI should maybe call both of them to address this forum. And they will actually, take you through, how do you partner with them or with various other organizations, with UN Women, with UN Youth. How do you partner with them, particularly whether it is, enhancing educational skills, or how do you safely browse the internet? What precautions one should be taking? So I think, the UN is an excellent resource for women entrepreneurs, as well as for FICCI itself. I think you must connect to them back in Delhi. It will be very useful.
Thank you. Now I would request Janabi to give concluding remarks.
The time went so fast, and yet we're so full of questions, and there's been so much of learning, Ambassador. But your points which you mentioned about UN Women, yes, with Flow, we do have a MOU with them. We are working quite closely with the others bodies as well. And for every opportunity we get, we will push SDGs, because that is very close to our hearts, and that is something we will take forward as a business body throughout. We want to say we understand that women play a critical role in all the SDGs, all the targets for especially gender equality, and the first zero hunger, which we all must see that we have achieved as well in the world. We women are 49% in our country of 1.3 billion. And this is the time to make our voice count. And we will have to work towards it. And we know that right now, where entrepreneurs are concerned, we are only 14% of our businesses are run by female entrepreneurs. I mean, we have out of 8.05 million, a total of 58.5 million, we are only 14%. But those are things we are working towards. India is in the new for Atmanirbhar Bharat. There's no excuse for us. We have to come forward and we have to work. And with these inputs, we want to thank you today, especially for the new insights that you've given us. And we look forward to working together, and we will keep reaching out to you, Ambassador, for how to work further and work consciously on the SDG goals. thank you very much. On behalf of all of us at FICCI and Flow, we thank you. Namaste. Yay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You all have a very good day. Thanks.
Before you leave, we have a small memento for you.
Yes.
Oh, so virtual memento. Thank you. We are very environment friendly now. So.
Yes. So this is our, yes.
Thank you. Very honored.
Yes, this is from us to you, and thank you very much.
Okay. There is one question I see on the chat box. Somebody by name Shika Sharma.
Okay.
She says that India will be taking over as a non-permanent member of the Security Council. How can we further take steps to become a permanent member? This is a very politically charged question, and I think as long as people like you are, support us, you make India strong, and a strong India deserves to be on the council. We are not there in the council today, but we are all working towards that as a permanent member. I think what we see today, the Security Council as an institution is a relic of World War II. It is not representative of the 21st century geopolitical reality. India cannot be ignored. We are too big to fathom. We don't fit into a box. At some point of time, we need to make ourselves seated there. And I think we don't have to push ourselves. We will be welcomed. The time will come. We are earnestly working towards it. And people like you will make it happen. I think I would leave it there. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks.
Vicky is a member of the UN Global Compact in India. Just wanted to share that with you. Thank you much. Thank you.
Thanks. You have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.